Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. The last 2 years, the federal government has been on a spending orgy, the likes of which no one on the planet has ever seen before. And now, as the election campaign season begins, we're hearing politicians talk tough about getting our fiscal house in order. But aren't you the guys who are just, oiling each other up and having the giant orgy? Yeah. The Republicans want to start by cutting $40 billion. The Democrats think that's reckless and out of control, and the news refers to this as controversial. I would agree that it's controversial. $40 billion? Let me show you how much $40 billion is. 40. Controversial? That is 3.3% of the yearly deficit. How much for the entire budget for next year? 1.05%. And for the national debt, this is what really matters to our kids. 0.28. Yeah, so I would say that it is controversial. That's not dangerous. That's a clerical error. The debt, that is dangerous. Paul Ryan now is leading the charge on this. He wants to cut $6 trillion over 10 years. Wish we could do it in shorter than 10. But the problem is, it is going to be hard to convince people and have them really understand what this means. We all are going to have our life changed. But we have to break out of something called the normalcy bias. This is critical that Americans understand what a normalcy bias really is. The normalcy bias, best way to explain it is 9/11. On 9/11, 2 massive jet planes crashed directly into office buildings. People saw them from their office come into the plane. They felt the building shake. They could see it on television. Yet some people who worked in the World Trade Center actually went to the stairwells and then turned around and said, "Oh, wait, I've got to turn off my computer," or "I forgot my coat. I'll be right back." Like they would be later in the day coming back to their office and turn their computer back on, like it made a difference. When were they going to come back to their office? An hour later, after they somehow or another got the burning airplane out of the building? When you think of this logically, it makes no sense. But it is something instinctive in people. We want something that is normal. And people run around ignoring the reality around them to hold on to some sense of life as usual. And that's what's happening in America. It is imperative that you break out of the normalcy bias, because nothing is business as usual in our country or on planet Earth. It is on fire. And your life, just as our lives did on September 11th, it's about to change. But you never make it down the stairwell or get out or save anyone else's life if you still think you can go back and turn off your lights and still make it out. It's on fire, and there is a chance to get out and save it and save others, but you must wake up now. Hello, comrades. I'm just trying it out. Hello, comrades. Workers of the world unite. Andy Stern was right. It's not just a slogan anymore, is it? Global unions. Unions have gone global. These are all the letters of solidarity from all over the globe. And it's the same story in country after country after country. What was that name of that book? Oh, yeah, that's right. The Coming Insurrection. Country after country, starting in Greece. The unions. Egypt, unions. England, unions. Wisconsin, unions. Has anybody noticed that this is all happening? Have you seen this on other channels? Are they tying it together and saying, hey, what's going on? No, they're all just saying that capitalism is bad. I want you to listen very carefully. If you are a member of a union, God bless you, you aren't the problem yet. But if you remain silent, if you bury your head, if you stay in the normalcy bias, you are going to be part of the problem. Just as we said after September 11th, where are all the good Muslims? Well, they were afraid, and they didn't say anything. And that didn't help. It made the problem worse. The problem here, at this point, is there are far too many people leading the unions that are communist, socialist, or revolutionary washouts from the 1960s, whose lone goal is and always has been the destruction of capitalism and the Western way of life. And we're seeing it play out over and over and over, all over the globe. Here's Wisconsin. Gee, that stand with Wisconsin, those people are carrying a sign that is a communist logo. That logo is part of the International Socialist Organization. But have you noticed these people? They're everywhere. Here are the unions. But look at the crowds when you see them. You'll notice a large portion of the crowds are students. Lenin had a name for them: useful idiots. Now, I've seen a lot of media hacks calling me crazy for pointing out the communist and the socialist, but they notice, at least I noticed, that they never specifically refute the claim. They make it about me. This isn't about me. This is about our country and our planet and the freedom for our children. They don't refute it. They make it about me because they can't refute it, because it's in their own words. Ask yourself next time you see anyone on any channel in America or the world talking about these images, ask them, ask yourself, why are they not showing the people standing with the unions, or the unions sometimes in their own words? Here's what we have from Wisconsin. The Socialist Party USA, democracy in the streets. Madison mobilizes to defeat the anti-labor Walker. Solidarity, this is a socialist, feminist, anti-racist organization, whatever the heck that means. Statement from Wisconsin: solidarity, we can, we must, we will. New York, Democratic Socialist of America, emergency Wisconsin solidarity rally. Make no mistake, these are coordinated, and they are radicals, revolutionaries, unions, socialists, and communists. Now, you can say all you want if you're in a union, well, my union, it's not, they don't agree with that. Fine. But may I remind you what your mother most likely told you, because my mother used to drill it into my head all the time. Show me your friends, and I will show you your future. Your union is in bed with communist, radicals, and socialists. Sometimes, like AFL-CIO, or even better example is SEIU, in the management itself. In Greece, you have the Socialist Resistance. 34 anti-capitalist groups plan European solidarity with Greek struggle. Socialist Party USA, talking about Greece, solidarity with the protests in Greece. SocialistParty.net, Greece capitalist austerity must be met with workers' action. In Egypt, something everyone denied, the Socialist Worker Online, how we are deepening the Egyptian revolution. The International Socialist Tendency in Egypt. Glory to the martyrs, victory to our revolution. Socialist unity, Egypt cries for freedom. In London, Revolution, a socialist youth movement. UK Socialist Party, the Socialist Workers' Party. Over 500,000 people marched through London today in a magnificent outpouring in the workers' class anger against the government. About 2 years ago, I had Sam Webb on the show. Do you remember this episode? This guy was so easy to dismiss. He's the head of the Communist Party USA. Don't dismiss him. Back here in America, he just recently wrote something in the People's World. Quote, the battle in Wisconsin electrified, for good reasons, the whole country. But the counteroffensive is not just Wisconsin. It is national in scope, diverse in form, creative in tactics, and united in action. This nationwide tapestry of struggle is multi-threaded, woven in varied patterns, loops, and colors. Important phrase. It is accompanied by a change in class mood, feeling, and consciousness, the likes of which we had not seen in recent decades. In the felt experience of tens of millions, capitalism isn't working for the working people. The American dream is crumbling, and something better is needed. This is a communist telling you that the American dream is over, like he ever believed in the American dream. Once you accept that the news is not telling you the truth, once you accept that there are people in Washington. Why are there not hearings on this in Washington? once you accept that this is permeating our entire society, not just in America, but around the globe, and you stop with the normalcy bias, it leaves you with a picture that really no one wants to look at. And that's why your neighbors aren't walking and looking at it. And it's much bigger than the President of the United States. That's why they've got to make this about the Democrats and Republicans, because that's easy to understand. This has nothing to do with President Obama, and it hasn't for quite some time. I believe President Obama is merely a player in the show. This is global in nature. And if you don't think so, do I need to show you the pictures from all over, or all of the unions saying exactly the same things in exactly the same words worldwide? There are radicals, globalists, Islamists, all working together. The radicals in the 1960s who were shunned because they were dope-smoking losers at the time, they still are losers. They have gotten together with the like-minded, and they believe now is their time, and they are reaching out to our kids in college and lower than that. They believe that capitalism is on the ropes. Frances Fox Piven, that sweet old grandma, just did a recent interview. Man, she gets around an awful lot, where they called capitalism evil. And she pretended to be shocked that I or anyone else would suggest that she's for violent uprisings. Why, I'm just sitting here having a little Metamucil. That's all I'm doing. Really? She says, I can't believe somehow or another they turned this around like I'm for violent uprisings. Not even 2 minutes later in the same interview, she calls for uprisings like in Egypt, Greece, and Tunisia. Watch.
Look at Egypt.
Yes.
Look at the protests in England and to Bahrain.
Yep.
And
Yemen.
Perhaps Libya. I think we may see a series of protest movements in the United States.
Would you think, Francis, that the movement could be led with these students?
I think it could happen. I hope it will happen.
Do I need to show you the videotape of the people being killed, the chaos in the streets, the revolution? Do I need to remind you, overthrow of the government in those, all of those situations are the goal? That is what she wants, and that is what many of those in labor unions want as well. Not the workers, but people like Andy Stern and Richard Trumka. A new system that is not capitalism, and they will do anything to destroy it. They will lie. Last night we showed you Howard Dean saying that Tea Parties are blowing up buildings like Bill Ayers did. Yet we've shown you where the actual violence comes from: unions. The Wisconsin teacher who left a terrifying yet very specific death threat to Wisconsin GOP members. Piven herself was inspired by violence, by the Watts riots. Her and her husband saw this and realized they could fundamentally transform America if they could get them to be hooked and revolt. But it's not only here that they seek to transform. Here is a list of all of the countries standing in solidarity with Wisconsin and the We Are One rallies, led by the unions and in support of the unions, held around the globe. Look at the list. There are countries, Bahrain. They got the Saudi tank thing going. They're standing in solidarity on this. I want to focus on domestic issues. In Canada, more than 2,000 Canadian and American trade unionists gathered at the Peace Arch in British Columbia. These rallies are happening, and there is no denying what's going on. This is what's going on. Radicals, Islamists, communists, and socialists working together against Israel, against capitalism, to overturn stability. The protests become contagious. They cascade. They sweep the Middle East. That's already been done. To destabilize Europe and then the rest of the world. How can anyone deny these things are going on? Why is no one tying them together for you? You've got to answer that question for yourself. We've already shown you the disturbing images of parents forcing their kids to chant at Wisconsin's Capitol building. Maybe they should form a child union to ensure chanting breaks. But this weekend, it got even worse. This weekend, the zombies came out. Now, I know that people used to dress their kids up at tea parties to look like Uncle Sam, etc., but here, this one's got blood all over their face. They're dressed as zombies. Oh, isn't that cute? And what are they chanting? They're holding up signs that say, "Eat the rich," while chanting, "Eat their brains." Well, that's not a problem, is it? All to make a point about collective bargaining. May I just spend a minute on collective bargaining? FDR, the lion of progressivism, was against it for government employees. And that's what we're talking about here. Why was he against it? Because FDR was not anti-American. He just didn't see America the same way. But he wasn't trying to destroy it entirely. He was going to make it the leader of the world. He warned about the dangers of government strike, which he called unthinkable and intolerable. Even the president of the AFL-CIO in 1955 said it was impossible to collectively bargain with the government. This was never a right. This was an executive order by John Kennedy. There was never a law passed. You have two parties negotiating a deal, and they're using someone else's money, yours. How is this working? You have the unions and the politicians. The unions want money from the politicians. The politicians give them the money through special sweetheart deals. Then the unions make sure that the people vote for that politician by using their money. Do you see what's happening? And they're equating that with Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. It's an abomination. I told you at the very beginning of this year, when I came back from vacation and we met here, I told you about E4. I told you that you were the solution to stop looking for leaders, to be a leader yourself. Enlightenment. Find out what you truly believe. Is God important? Educate yourself, empower yourself, and then entrepreneurship. Be part of something creative, not a destructive force. Be a force for good. Know the history and the truth of your own country. It is so important because history is being hijacked. I love this little piece of history about Bill Ayers. This Bill Ayers is a pillar in his community. Does anyone even bother to point out that not only did he actually target and blow up buildings, not only did he do that, he killed police officers, he and his pals, in an armed robbery. His group didn't even blink when they talked about slaughtering 25 million people. Let me show you a little piece of history. This is a former FBI agent who went undercover at the Weather Underground, talked about what was said and discussed in the meetings. Listen.
I ask, well, what is going to happen to those people that we can't re-educate, that are die-hard capitalists? And the reply was that they'd have to be eliminated. And when I pursued this further, they estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill.
Well, isn't it convenient that we are educating our children by putting blood on their faces and have them chant, "Eat the rich" and "Eat their brains"? Not suggesting that anyone's going to have our children eat the rich, literally, but we are dehumanizing them now, aren't we? It makes it easier to liquidate. Now, these guys are on the love boat of revolution. The same people that talked about killing 25 million Americans. If you can't get them to give up capitalism, kill them. They're now on the flotilla. How much love can there be? And how much love is there in Wisconsin, where the unions recently sent out letters to threaten hundreds of local businesses? Quote in the letter, "Failure to do so will leave us no choice but to do a public boycott of your business. And sorry, neutral means no to those who work for the largest employer in the area and are union members." Is that love or is that a threat? Ask yourself, where does this lead? Where does it end? How does it end? I'll show you how it has ended in the past next. We're talking about the unions, and this isn't the first time businesses have been attacked. I want to go here. Tell me what the problem is. Is it the rich capitalist, the union boss, the politician, or you, the taxpayer and investor? Where is the problem? Is it this one, or this one? It could be a combination of all of them. Well, let me show you how they work. 1877, the workers for the B&O Railroad went on strike. Their wages had been cut 2 separate times. They refused to let the trains run until their pay cut was returned. The state militia was called, but sided with the workers, so they didn't do anything. And the protests spread to several states. Strikers actually gained control of several cities. Then they destroyed railroad property, set fire to buildings, destroyed freight and passenger cars, and they shut down service. It wasn't stopped until federal troops were sent in to restore order. Where will the federal government stand now? Do you think they're going to be the one that is going to help you when things spiral out of control? Of course, bottom up, top down, and inside out. It can be even worse. The Italian Socialist Party had what they called Red Week, a period of widespread rioting throughout the country. The New York Times reported on the strike and the strike war, and they called it anarchy in Italy. Many are killed. Warships are ready. It was total chaos. Traffic was thwarted. Railroads attacked. Injured passengers. Bombs were tossed into the crowds. The government came down with a heavy hand to quell the uprising. Top down, bottom up, inside out. That one ended in Mussolini. If you can't nudge, you shove. And if you can't shove, well, there's only one more option. But it all starts with intimidation, like it is now in Wisconsin. You're being told by the unions that the government doesn't have the money, that they are not broke, that they can afford the pensions. But a retired teacher in California makes more than those teaching in 28 states. California needs a 20% return on their investment just to make ends meet. 20%. Does that sound reasonable? If I could get 20% or you could get 20%, we'd all be rich. How could you get 20% on your investment? That's Bernie Madoff stuff. It's fiction. Who does their budget like that? Do you? Florida sugarcoated their budget, basing it on projected 7% returns. But over the last decade, they've only averaged 2.6. So keep your fingers crossed. What happens? Now, let me ask you this, Stephen Lerner. If you're setting out now to collapse the stock market, which your pension funds are in, how does this help the teachers and the firemen and the police, the taxpayer and the investor? Remember, you want to get this guy because the rich capitalist is a bad guy. So the friendly union boss takes the money and says, I'm going to put it in a pension fund along with the politician. They invested in stocks. Well, that's bad too. And that's when the union boss says, we're going to collapse the stock market. Well, then what happens to your money? What happens to your money? You collapse the stock market, all your pension is here. The problem is not here with you, the investor, the taxpayer, or the union member. The problem is this. Look at this. These two have been colluding, whether it is Republican or Democrat. And the rich capitalist, may I just point out, GE? They're all in it together. And they're all blaming someone else. They're the only ones that are going to walk away with any money. You have nothing. Don't be used by them. Because in the end, it is going to collapse because they're all corrupt. And they want it to collapse. But if we haven't linked arms with people who believe in the same thing, union members, you believe in the same kind of America that I do, one that is fair, is for equal justice under the law, one that puts the bad guys in jail. We thought on September 11th that we were all alike. On September 12th, we all stood hand in hand. Well, one of the guys that the unions and so many Americans are standing joined with because they think he's a normal guy is Van Jones. He has been so scrubbed clean by the left that nobody really knows who he is. You, in the end, after it collapses, you'll be standing here hand in hand with Van Jones. Well, do you really believe the same thing that Van Jones does? Is he going to help you rebuild the America that you grew up knowing? Or is he for a system that you don't even recognize? Well, to answer that question, we have recently found a videotape of what Van Jones was doing the day after 9/11. Where were you on 9/12? Listen to what one of the radicals in attendance had to say where Van Jones was.
We want to also understand, though, that their lives were lost because of our government's inhumane foreign policy. And we should be angry. We should be off at what our country does around the rest of the world that leads us not to be safe here.
Van Jones had similar words. That's where he was on 9/11 when you most likely were at a blood bank comforting someone else. A lot of people just think that Van Jones is just a normal guy. He is not. Here he is the day after 9/11 at that same rally.
It's the bombs that the government has been dropping around the world that are now blowing up inside the U.S. borders. We've got something stronger than bombs. We have solidarity.
There
That
it
dream
is.
of revolutionary change is stronger than bombs.
The day after 9/11. Do the events in the Middle East now make sense when I tell you this? Radicals, Islamists, communists, and socialists are working together against Israel. When you see where he was and what he said, this wonderful human being that is just like you, when you hear what he was saying on 9/12/2001, you might want to reconsider. Be careful where you stand. Because I know my mother told me, and I bet she told you, show me your friends and I will show you your future. Is that where you were on that day, union workers? Thinking like that? This is a question you must ask yourself now. Do I see America the same way as these communist, radicals, revolutionaries, and Islamists see America? If not, get away and stand with others like you. America, I want to warn you that this, I believe, is the summer of revolution. Things are going to get worse, and I believe May is going to play a huge role, as will September. Oh, did I say something that I shouldn't have, socialist and communist? Yes, we're listening, and we're reading, and sometimes right over your shoulder, and you don't know it. The socialists and leftists continued the fun today with the Fight Back USA National Teach-In. 269 campuses across the country participated. Ivy League schools like Yale, Harvard, Brown, Dartmouth were all involved. Some high schools. The organizer at William Patterson University in New Jersey said, like in Wisconsin and Ohio, the time has come in New Jersey for students and youth and teachers and firefighters and all public employee unions to unite and take back the State House. We must fight against the assault on the public good. Remember, these are socialists and communists saying that you need to gather together and fight back. If you couldn't be there to experience the excitement in the teach-in, Fight Back USA offered a live stream of special national teach-in on fighting austerity, debt, and corporate greed. It was billed as a 60s-style teach-in meets the digital age in live stream webcast. And who doesn't want to get back to the 60s styles of radicalism? You know, the protests, the bombs, the communists. And speaking of commies, the stars of the teach-in, well, of course, everybody's favorite grandma, Frances Fox Piven. Man, she gets around. Cornel West and special guest Richard Trumka. Now, one of the resources featured on the Fight Back Teach-In website, and I love this, was the Tree of Corporate Destruction. It's an original design created for Frances Fox Piven. Isn't it nice? Darn those corporations, always hiring people and paying their salaries and benefits. Evil. She talked about the inspiration for this tree during today's special teach-in. Watch.
We got the idea of the tree from this guy on TV. can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But, you know, he got the tree wrong. He always says that he does his research in the wee hours of the morning all by himself.
No, I don't.
We don't do our research in the wee hours of the morning all by ourselves. We draw on lots of our colleagues, scholars,
Yes.
experts, researchers,
yes.
all over the country, all over the world.
Oh, she's telling the truth. Yes, she is. But look at this. She certainly can't be talking about yours truly, because if you look at her tree, you know, that all of the worldwide experts help her put together, it shows a lot of corporations that we've exposed on this show. They already pay people to monitor this show. Monitor, they watch it all the time. Like 86 people just in Media Matters are monitoring it right now. And they still screw it up. I don't blindly stand with corporations. A lot of these. Goldman Sachs, I think it's dirty. GE, BP, yeah. I stand with the free market. As long as a corporation is honest and clean and playing by the rules. Not special rules, the rules. That's happening, damn right I stand with them. The bad ones, throw them in jail, shut them down. Here's my tree. I don't know if you notice anything. That's weird, huh? I would put a lot of these people in jail. I'd put a lot of these people in jail too. These people are just dirty. These people are plotting against the U.S. That's called treason. I would ask you, France, may I call you France? If I were Barbara Walters, what kind of tree would you be? I want to show you this because I think it answers what kind of tree she would be. Here's a picture of Frances Fox Piven. That's her right there. Now this was a woman whose life was inspired by the Watts riots, and her inspiration was to create more of them, not less. You may not have seen this photo before. It was taken in 1968 when she was teaching at Columbia University. She's shown here being pulled up by a student named Tom Hayden. Now, who's Tom Hayden? Tom Hayden is the guy who founded Students for a Democratic Society in 1961. He then went on to marry the sweet and lovable Jane Fonda. He was elected to California's State Assembly and State Senate, and the author of this recent article in The Nation. And he called another person that we have, oh my gosh, we've been talking about recently, that we just kind of stumbled onto. It's amazing how they have these colleagues all over the world, isn't it? Samantha Power goes to war. He writes, over a long conversation with Power back in December of '03, I was struck by the generational factor in her thinking. If she had experienced Vietnam in her early 20s, I felt she would have joined the radical left, suspicious always of American power. He continues, she began to see war as an instrument to achieving her liberal, even radical values. Well, now wait a minute. She's the one that's whispering in the president's ear about who we should support in the Middle East. Forget about war for oil, war for radical values. Gee, I wonder which radical value he could be talking about. I doubt it's the destruction of capitalism, because that would be crazy. So what are all these radicals teaching at the teach-in today? What are the resources that they're saying to your kid, you need to tap in and learn? You know, they're sending them, American Federation of Teachers, Farm Labor Organization, Home Defenders League, Jobs with Justice. It's weird. A lot of these have something in common. It really is getting boring, isn't it? I mean, it's like the same. It's like if you watched, I don't know, Columbo or something, and the same guy was killing everybody at the end of each episode. It's kind of like, I mean, now in the meetings in the morning, we're like, let me guess, Soros did it. It's getting boring. I mean, guys, spice it up a little bit. You almost had us with the Samantha Power, Susan Power thing. That was good. And then it ended in Soros again. Oh, well, we'll see what you do tomorrow.
It's delivering critical information, honest analysis, and real answers. This is putting in the work and making it pay off. This is business in America. This is Fox Business. Varney and Company.
I want to make this very clear. I want to just go over a few completely unrelated, isolated, noticeable moments, if I may. The president is now being called a flip-flopper on his Gitmo decision, and I think that's just wrong. Sure, it's interesting. Yes. I mean, remember when he came blazing into the office? He told us how evil Gitmo was, and it had to be shut down, remember? Trying the suspects at Gitmo would only inflame the Islamic world. That was important. Can't do it at Gitmo. Inflame the Islamic world. That's why he had to have them tried and sent right here into the U.S. justice system, right here in New York, he said, to showcase how fair and just we are and not inflame the Islamic world. Again, I just want to throw out these totally disconnected, noticeable moments. Our president, who is surrounded by people who are radical, one, Samantha Power, who I just told you was described as someone who sees war as an instrument to achieving her liberal, even radical values. She's the one whispering, let's go to Libya. He's also surrounded by other people who would love nothing better than to take down the little Satan, Israel, and the great Satan, us, as well. For that matter, people like Rashid Khalidi, a friend of Obama's from the University of Chicago, an anti-Israel extremist who was a PLO advisor to Yasser Arafat. He is, let's say, an acquaintance of Bill Ayers. And Bernardine Dohrn, the 60s and 70s terrorist. And you know what? What's weird is they're going on the Love Boat of Revolution to the Gaza Strip in May. The last flotilla had ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, who are now, by the way, starting a modesty police force in Egypt so some of the girls can be checked to make sure that they're still virgins. Isn't that great? Now, our president encouraged the youth to rise up in revolt all across the Middle East, even here. Yet, he did nothing to help the Iranian people with their revolt against Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Then, the president went into Libya to help and protect, because Power said, we've got to do it. Yeah. And then they even armed the rebels with ties to Al-Qaeda, and some with ties to Gitmo, who were directly fighting against our troops in Iraq or Afghanistan. And he's also backing the extremist Muslim president in the Ivory Coast, who last weekend had 1,000 people killed. So I just find it interesting. Those are just all noticeable events, too, completely disconnected and unrelated, and has nothing to do with anything else in the world. Just a noticeable moment that as we have launched a third war against a Muslim nation, further inflaming the radicals, the president has decided that now it's okay to tie and try the Muslims at Gitmo, something that he said we couldn't do because it would inflame the Islamic world. But don't worry, none of those things are connected. Back in a minute. Man, there's just some weird, unrelated timing that's going on in the world. I want to take you to Terry Jones, you know, the despicable pastor who, in a desperate cry for attention at best, please take his picture off, don't give it to him, burned the Koran a couple of weeks ago, inflaming Islam in the greater Middle East where our troops are. Now, I'm puzzled by this timing as well. He threatened this in September, and then he waits until now. And for an encore, he wants to put the Prophet Muhammad on trial. Shh, don't tell Terry, but he's been dead for almost 1,400 years. It won't be a fair trial because he can't be provided an attorney. He can't afford one. He's dead. Don't tell Terry. Gives me the opportunity to ask Harry Reid, who is still looking into this guy, if he looked into the 5 Christians who were supposedly having a trial that started today or yesterday in Iran for blasphemy. According to Christian Solidarity Worldwide, their trial has been postponed until April 12th. They've already served 1 year in prison for crimes against the Islamic order. Their crimes? They had house churches. They conducted church at their house. Fortunately, there hasn't been mass Christian killings and uprisings as a result. But the contrast should be a clue to the clueless in Washington on who we should be focusing our attention on. Back in a minute. Me crazy for this. You cannot deny that it's happening now. They're also going to call me crazy for saying that Israel is being set up. It is true. Join me for a special 1-hour broadcast on Friday you can't afford to miss. Andy Stern was right. It's not just a slogan anymore, is it? Global unions. Unions have gone global. These are all the letters of solidarity from all over the globe. And it's the same story in country after country after country. What was that name of that book? Oh, yeah, that's right. The Coming Insurrection. Country after country, starting in Greece, the unions. Egypt, unions. England, unions. Wisconsin, unions. Has anybody noticed that this is all happening? Have you seen this on other channels? Are they tying it together and saying, hey, what's going on? No, they're all just saying that capitalism is bad. I want you to listen very carefully. If you are a member of a union, God bless you, you aren't the problem yet. But if you remain silent, if you bury your head, if you stay in the normalcy bias, you are going to be part of the problem. Just as we said after September 11th, where are all the good Muslims? Well, they were afraid, and they didn't say anything. And that didn't help. It made the problem worse. The problem here, at this point, is there are far too many people leading, but it is something instinctive in people. We want something that is normal. And people run around ignoring the reality around them to hold on to some sense of life as usual. And that's what's happening in America. It is imperative that you break out of the normalcy bias, because nothing is business as usual in our country or on planet Earth. It is on fire. And your life, just as our lives did on September 11th, it's about to change. But you never make it down the stairwell or get out or save anyone else's life if you still think you can go back and turn off your lights and still make it out. It's on fire, and there is a chance to get out and save it and save others, but you must wake up now. Hello, comrades. We're just trying it out. Hello, comrades. Workers of the world unite. The unions that are communist, socialist, or revolutionary washouts from the 1960s, whose lone goal is and always has been the destruction of capitalism and the Western way of life. And we're seeing it play out over and over and over all over the globe. Here's Wisconsin. Gee, that Stand With Wisconsin, those people are carrying a sign that is a communist logo. That logo is part of the International Socialist Organization. But have you noticed these people? They're everywhere. Here are the unions. But look at the crowds when you see them. You'll notice a large portion of the crowds are students. Lenin had a name for them: useful idiots. Now, I've seen a lot of media hacks calling me crazy for pointing out the communist and the socialist, but they notice, at least I noticed, that they never specifically refute the claim. They make it about me. This isn't about me. This is about our country and our planet and the freedom for our children. They don't refute it. They make it about me because they can't refute it, because it's in their own words. Ask yourself next time. Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. The last 2 years, the federal government has been on a spending orgy, the likes of which no one on the planet has ever seen before. And now, as the election campaign season begins, we're hearing politicians talk tough about getting our fiscal house in order. But aren't you the guys who are just, oiling each other up and having the giant orgy? Yeah. The Republicans want to start by cutting $40 billion. The Democrats think that's reckless and out of control, and the news refers to this as controversial. I would agree that it's controversial. $40 billion? Let me show you how much $40 billion is. 40. Controversial? That is 3.3% of the yearly deficit. How much for the entire budget for next year? 1.05%. And for the national debt, this is what really matters to our kids. 0.28. Yeah, so I would I would say that it is controversial. That's not dangerous. That's a clerical error. The debt, that is dangerous. Paul Ryan now is leading the charge on this. He wants to cut $6 trillion over 10 years. Wish we could do it in shorter than 10. But the problem is, it is going to be hard to convince people and have them really understand what this means. We all are going to have our life changed. But we have to break out of something called the normalcy bias. This is critical that Americans understand what a normalcy bias really is. The normalcy bias, best way to explain it is 9/11. On 9/11, 2 massive jet planes crashed directly into office buildings. People saw them from their office come into the plane. They felt the building shake. They could see it on television. Yet some people who worked in the World Trade Center actually went to the stairwells and then turned around and said, "Oh, wait, I've got to turn off my computer," or "I forgot my coat. I'll be right back." Like they would be later in the day coming back to their office and turn their computer back on, like it made a difference. When were they going to come back to their office? An hour later, after they somehow or another got the burning airplane out of the building? When you think of this logically, it makes no sense.